All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking about real music in real time for a few real people, just like you and just like me. Always a lull, actually, in the world of classic rock. Not much going on, just not much happening. Before I get going on this video, which is going to have some Steve Perry content, um, Pride of Lions, Dream Higher, Jim Peterick had a little episode a couple of weeks ago, I believe, on stage when he was performing with Ides of March, and that's his first band before Survivor and Pride of Lions. This is really good. This is like motivational music, all right? Listen to Dream Higher. Should be in like a movie soundtrack, of course. Remember when movie soundtracks were like a big deal and you had to have the soundtrack because it had all these great songs on it? Yeah, those days pretty much are long gone. So yeah, let's talk about Neal Schon. Before I do that, Neal Schon and Steve Perry. Don't forget about Modern Retro Radio, modernretrofm.com. Please go and listen to the radio over there. You'll hear music that you won't hear on mainstream rock stations. And we have to kind of create our own parallel economy with this boring, out of touch radio industrial complex, which, I listened to a mainstream rock station yesterday for a little while. Literally hurt my ears. I always say music that doesn't make your ears bleed. That's the kind of stuff I prefer. Every song, my ears were just gushing. It was just awful. So things haven't changed over there. It's very monolithic. Now, back in 2003, Neal Schon said some stuff that I think is pretty interesting and illustrates the divide that was probably more than just injuries and personalities. But, when Steve Perry got into Journey, the band really changed a lot, and it kept changing. This is what Neal Schon says, or back then he said this. He never really liked to play that much rock and roll. Even when we did our double live record Captured in Detroit, that's probably the hardest this band has rocked, even if I think it sounds dated when I listen to it now. Progressively, we got softer and softer, and great music is great music, but I still like to rock, and it was very hard to get it going. Even though Neal confessed that he had nothing to do with Perry's departure from the band, it's evident that the two musicians didn't always see eye to eye, especially after Steve's departure. And then they go on to talk about Steve's recent legal action, which was eventually dropped, where Neal and Jonathan Cain were trying to file trademarks around such songs as Any Way You Want It, Separate Ways, Wheel in the Sky, Open Arms, and Stone in Love. Stone in Love. What a great song that is. Doesn't get any airplay on today's radio stations because Stone in Love was a deep track. It's a deep track. It was all over rock stations back in the day. And I've explained this to people who weren't there to remember that back in those days, rock stations would often play songs that the top 40 stations didn't play. In fact, DJs often had discretion where they could drop the needle on whatever song they wanted, so long as the boss wasn't really looking. But if he heard you playing stuff that was way off the beaten track, sometimes, you would get called into the office and, how come you're playing Escape? That's not a hit, Dave. I heard that so many times. You're not playing the right songs. And I go, well, have you heard that song? Because it's really good, back in those days where everything wasn't so scripted and focus tested, because you might lose, an advertiser. And God forbid you lost an advertiser, because then how would you go out and get another one? Anyway, so Captured, the album that Neal mentions, is really Journey's best live album. I mean, there is Live in Houston, which is stellar, but Captured has that old school feeling to it, and Neal is right. the guitar solos, everything about that album is just more rockin', as he likes to say. And when Steve Perry released Traces, you kind of knew where he was going, what direction he had decided to take. A lot of fans who like Steve Perry in Journey were like, okay, where are the rock songs, Steve? But his hardcore fans were thrilled that he had released new music, and we're still waiting for some new material from Steve Perry. He's talked about it. He says he's recording. He's always got ideas, but folks, I'm going to be honest here. The way the classic rock industry and business and mortality is right now, and I'm not saying Steve is, on the brink of not being here anymore. Let's put it that way. But if you want to put something out there, you better hurry up and do it. Interest in this music is waning. And, I can tell that a lot of what I do on this channel is very targeted for an audience, because there are a lot of people that aren't into this music, and they don't understand why we all still love it so much. It is feeling dated. This is like the first year, being above ground and just listening to radio stations that are still playing the same stuff over and over again from 40 years ago. That stuff is starting to sound dated. Production wise, a little bit, but more just, it's from another era. It just is weird that they're still playing music from 40 and 50 years ago. Imagine a radio station in 1980 playing something from 1930. It's incomprehensible, right? There's obviously music from that era, but hey, we're going to be playing music from the 30s, right? And I'm going to be like, no, I'm not into the 30s. So anyway, the breakup between Steve and Neal, I think, stems a lot from creative differences. And Steve came in and he made the band a ton of money by just being Steve Perry, number one, and singing the way he sings. And number two, changing the direction. In fact, by the time they got to Raised on Radio, they had gotten rid of their one-name album titles. And not that album doesn't have any Journey-like material on there from the past. It's Steve's second solo album, basically. It really is. Obviously, Jonathan Cain still contributed a lot to it, plus his keyboard work on that album, I think, is really stellar. And Neal lays down some beautiful guitar solos. I'll Be All Right Without You, one of the great Neal Schon all-time moments. But by then, you're almost listening to a yacht rock band a little bit. It was the 80s and the technology and the sounds were different, but Steve had steered that band in a completely different direction. And rock stations responded. They didn't play that album as much as the other albums. Frontiers was huge on rock stations, whereas Raised on Radio was like more of a top 40 album. And hence, you can release a lot of singles to top 40 and they'll do really well. They're not doing as well on rock stations at that point. And I think, Steve tried to get a little bit more experimental on his own with For the Love of Strange Medicine. And it wasn't well received because the timing of it just wasn't good with, where the music industry was going at that point. And, the whole Journey reunion, Trial by Fire, again, almost an adult contemporary album from start to finish. Great music. And Neal Schon says, hey, it's great music, but I wanted to rock. And in this current lineup, if you watch Neal Schon, especially live in concert, he is rocking out. And there was some pretty rocking stuff on Freedom, some surprising stuff on there that I think some fans didn't like. They're like, what's he doing on this song? This doesn't sound like Journey. There's one track where I think it was the second or third single and people were like, "What's this?" But Neal Schon, I think, is a closet. Well, not even closet. He's out in the open about the fact that he likes to jam out. And if Journey had become a jam band and was able to make a lot of money, I think that would have been Neal's ultimate goal, But Herbie brought Steve in and made the band a ton of money. And you become more agreeable when money is rolling in. And Steve Perry, hard to beat him as a singer. So it's hard to argue with the success and the direction the band went. And hence, that's why they had all the female fans where they didn't have the female fans before. And for guys, hey, I could take this beautiful woman out to see Journey tonight, rather than staying at home because she loves Journey, And so that was a real plus. It was a date band. You could take your date, and the girl would probably be more into it than you, but you were like, okay, Neal Schon's here, so that's the testosterone angle. Neal, start shredding, and I don't know. Girl was waiting for Steve to sing. That's pretty much a given. But yeah, the division here is probably more out of the fact that Steve Perry's influences were different than Neal Schon's influences. I mean, Neal was listening to Clapton and Cream and Jimi Hendrix and that kind of material. And Steve was listening to Sam Cooke and a lot of Motown music. And the two collided, and sometimes it worked out really, really well. There's no arguing with that. So in any event, Steve Perry, we're still waiting, buddy. Solo album, maybe for Christmas. Announcements would start to come out maybe August and September if that were going to happen. So we shall see. You never know with Steve Perry. I mean, he plays everything very close to the vest, and he wants to maximize his output and his visibility. And right now it's a good time because Journey is in a lull, right? So Journey's kind of not being talked about all that much, except that Greg Raleigh thing that happened a week or two ago. So Steve's got like a clear runway here if he wants to land his new music and start promoting it. But we'll see, folks. I wouldn't hold your breath. But then again, I've been wrong about this before. I did predict Traces would come out. I just got the timing wrong. And it took, a couple of years before that happened. I started talking about it. Steve Perry's return to music. And then, okay, Steve, any day now. And it took a while. So anyway, you don't have to wait too long for Pride of Lions to come out with material. They're constantly making great music. Jim Peterick is out there. Toby Hitchcock, too, was part of this Three Tenors project earlier in the year. It was called T3 Nors. Really bad marketing. I'm just going to say it was bad marketing. But if you look up three tenors, seriously, that's what they did with it. Just amazing stuff. Great vocals, great songs, as well as the Pride of Lions album, which is called Dream Higher. Music that I guess some people still want to seek out. And thank you, by the way, for seeking out this channel. Still losing revenue, but I am getting some new patrons and some generous folks that are coming on board. They like the content. They feel sorry for me, whatever it is. I appreciate it, folks. I really do, because I guess this is going to be the future. I also have a new political channel. You don't have to like the political channel. You don't have to subscribe to it. It's not for everybody. I'm a little bit strange when it comes to politics. The channel is called The Warmongers, and I gave it that title because there's pretty much a war on everything in society, and I do want to talk about issues related to geopolitics, really exciting stuff, the stuff that makes people glaze over. They hear Roger Waters spewing something, and they're like, oh, dude, just play the song, So, yeah, if that appeals to you, then I will put a link, or I'm going to put a link in the description of this video. I need subscribers over there if you're interested in that stuff. And that's kind of it. All right. So don't forget about modern retro radio. Don't forget to tip your bartenders and waitresses, and make sure you stay away from CVS or Walgreens. I mean, you don't need to go there, even though they're telling you to go multiple times. You can avoid that. You know what you can do? You can shelter in place at home and not go to CVS.